Welcome, Initiate. The official record is clear. Fulgrim, the Phoenician, was corrupted by a cursed blade. That's the scripture they want you to believe. But we are not here to debate his guilt. Oh no. The record clearly shows Fulgrim butchered his sworn brother, Ferrus Manus, and wept tears of rapture doing it. He dragged the Emperor's children into the deepest pits of Slaneshi hell. He is very guilty. That is ruled out. The question I present to you, Initiate, is this. If the son is a monster, what does that make the father who sculpted him flawless and then set him loose without breaks? To understand the monster, we must first understand his world. Fulgrim's story doesn't begin in a palace. It begins in a tomb. The world of Chemos was a resource-poor planet choking on its own industry, a place of perpetual twilight where beauty had been sacrificed for survival. Into this bleak, utilitarian hell, a perfect child fell from the stars. Even as a boy, he was different. He didn't just understand the failing technology, he instinctively perfected it. He rose from worker to world leader, not through force, but through sheer competence. He taught a dying world to create again, waging a personal crusade against ugliness, against mediocrity, against imperfection. And then, the Emperor came. When the master of mankind arrived on Chemos, he didn't find a barbarian king to be conquered. He found a reflection, a son who had, against all odds, remade a dying world in his own image of perfection. Fulgrim, seeing the godlike being before him, knelt and offered his undying loyalty. The Emperor, in turn, saw the culmination of his own ambition and bestowed upon the Third Legion a staggering honor. They would be the Emperor's children. They alone given the right to bear the Palatine Aquila, the Emperor's personal sigil. This wasn't just a name, but it was clearly a mission statement. From that day, Fulgrim and his sons were not just space marines. They were paragons, the standard against which all others would be measured, the embodiment of the Emperor's vision for a perfect imperium. But there is a problem with that, Initiate, because he gave Fulgrim an impossible standard to uphold. The perfect son, his tragic fall. Pretty clean narrative, right? Well, that is because everything you just heard is the perfect alibi, the sanctioned story designed to hide the real question. Because from this moment on, the story begins to fall apart. The official story claims the Emperor didn't see the danger, and we have talked before about how he is the master of mankind, etc. But maybe in this case, he didn't plan anything, always pointing at him, but this time we think it could be deeper than that. A being whose entire identity is built on the certainty of his own perfection cannot see flaws in his own reflection. That was a mouthful, but basically, the Emperor looked at Fulgrim and saw himself, his ambition, his drive, his relentless refusal to accept anything less than absolute excellence. He saw those qualities and called them virtues, because it is a good virtue, but he never asked where they lead. The Emperor's vanity told him the answer didn't matter because his creations didn't fail, his reflections didn't shatter. That was simply not a possibility the Emperor's self-image had room for. He, in his quest for a perfect son, had not taught Fulgrim balance. He only taught him that perfection was the only acceptable state of being. And then he walked away from the mirror he had built, certain it would remain flawless, without ever looking back. The Great Crusade continued, and the Emperor's children were magnificent. But the true corruption began long before any cursed blade was ever drawn. It began when Fabius Bile, the Legion's chief apothecary, first suggested they could improve upon the Emperor's own genetic work. Fulgrim, obsessed with eradicating any hint of flaw, gave his consent. Before he ever touched a demon sword, he had already committed the ultimate heresy. He had decided the Emperor's creation was not perfect enough. Then came Laren. The official scripture tells us this is where the fall began. After a grueling campaign, Fulgrim discovers a beautiful silver sword in a Xenos temple. The blade, the story goes, was a demon weapon, and his corruption was inevitable. But this simplifies a complex tragedy into a convenient tale of demonic possession. The demon within the blade didn't implant new thoughts. It listened to the thoughts that were already there and whispered them back, amplified. It preyed on the existing pride, the existing insecurity, the secret belief that even the Emperor's work could be improved upon. When the sword whispered of a perfection beyond the Emperor's vision, it was echoing Fulgrim's own arrogant heart. The road to Istvan V is a cascade of choices. When Horus turned, he didn't need to work hard to corrupt his brother. He simply offered Fulgrim what he had always craved: a galaxy free from the Emperor's rigid truth, a galaxy where humanity could achieve its true, untethered potential. It was the promise of ultimate perfection, and that is an offer Fulgrim couldn't refuse. The final unforgivable act came on the black sands of Istvan V. During the duel, Fulgrim found himself holding the Laren blade. The demon surged, and he killed Ferrus Manus, his closest friend among all 20 Primarchs. But this is the crucial moment. In the shock of that act, his mind cleared, and he was horrified. In that moment of weakness and despair, the demon offered him an escape, oblivion, an end to the pain. Fulgrim accepted. This is the excuse many offer for him, but let's get to the end of it first. Because later, through an extraordinary act of will, he fought back. He exorcised the demon and reclaimed his own body. He was free again and had a choice. So what did he choose, you may ask, Initiate? He chose Slaanesh. I'm sorry, Initiate, I was mad thinking about it. Of his own free will, with the demon gone and his mind his own, he looked at the path of excess, sensation, and utter depravity, and he embraced it. The blade wasn't his master, his own vanity was. He ascended to become a demon prince not as a puppet, but as a willing servant who had finally found the one god who would reward his endless quest for more. So what does this mean for the Emperor? The sword, the demon, the corruption, all of it was real. None of that is in question, but the sword found something to corrupt, and what it found had been growing in Fulgrim since Chemos, since the Emperor watched his son build a civilization around aesthetic perfection and decided that was exactly the son he wanted. He built a son defined entirely by the pursuit of perfection without limits, and then pointed him at the galaxy. He built in no ceiling, no boundary, no moment where someone told Fulgrim where excellence ends and excess begins. And when the mirror shattered, when perfectionism without limits became exactly what Slaanesh promises, the Emperor did nothing. He didn't because he didn't plan it or calculated it. Because a being whose vanity tells him his creations are perfect cannot see a flaw in his own reflection until it is already gone. Fulgrim was simply never seen as something that could break. He was a mirror shattered, and when that happens, you don't grieve. You just take the pieces from the floor with caution to not cut yourself. That is indifference dressed as perfection. There are two versions of Fulgrim. In one, he is a monster who chose this freely, who picked up a cursed blade and refused every warning, who wept with pleasure at killing his closest friend, who continued when he didn't have to. No victim. The sword didn't make him, he made himself. In the other, he is something that disturbs more than it disgusts. Not innocent, never innocent, but a monster who was built by someone who never told him where the edge was, who never looked closely enough to see the crack forming, who replaced the mirror when it broke and called it progress. The Emperor's greatest vanity wasn't Fulgrim's beauty. It was the Emperor's certainty that his reflections could not fail, and his complete inability to grieve when they did. The tragedy of Fulgrim is not that a hero fell, it's that the Emperor never noticed he was falling. Does the blame lie with the masterpiece or with the architect? Because here, in the Illuminati Broadcast Network, we don't tell you what to believe, Initiate. We just make sure you've seen what is actually there. But ask yourself one more question before you decide. When Fulgrim shattered, when the Emperor's most perfect reflection became a demon of Slaanesh, did the Emperor grieve? Or did he simply look away? This transmission is closed, but the network doesn't stop broadcasting. The next report is already waiting, Initiate, and what it contains is something the Administratum has been trying to bury for 10,000 years. If you are not yet a registered Initiate, the subscribe button is right there. The Council is watching who clicks it. Illuminati Broadcast Network, out.